I actually have my laptop with me. I have lots of liberty presentations on that laptop. I go around the world talking about the monetary system and persuading people on the left to come over to our point of view and all kinds of things. Yesterday I had some of those presentations open and I was piecing together my speech for today, scribbling notes on bits of papers that are also in my computer bag, and I've left a whole lot up in my room because of last night. Because liberty actually, for me, it's not the beginning and the end. I'm here because I love you, actually. And for me, liberty without love is hollow. I have on these 3 bits of green paper that I scrawled things on last night. I'm going to show you this so you know I'm not actually just saying this for a rhetorical effect. Last night I put 2 words on the top of the first one. It's a real mess. Love and truth. That just kept coming to my head as I was watching this all play out and being frustrated because I wasn't allowed to speak.
And we benefit from that today.
You know what? Yeah, I get the last laugh, right? Funny how things happen. Yeah, I believe in liberty as a political cause and an economic cause and a cultural cause. Because before I believed in liberty, I believed in love and truth. And I want to talk most about the first one. And so I was actually, I should say, this is a first in many, many ways. It is a first for me to be up at 8 in the morning to give a speech on a Sunday. That's how much I care. Okay. It's also a first that I am going to more or less begin a speech, because I usually talk to the left, and I usually talk to liberals, and I usually talk to students on campuses. And I usually don't speak in the States. So I'm kind of usually speaking to a different cultural paradigm. So it's a first that I'm actually going to basically begin my remarks with a quote, thanks to Pastor Matt. A quote. I said a quote, yeah. A quote from the Bible. I'm going to quote the Bible. 1 Corinthians 13. Though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, and even of angels. Even, that's my insertion, not God's. Okay. But have not love, I have become sounding brass or a clanging cymbal. And that's what I felt. What I felt last night. And I also wrote down the verse from Ephesians, excuse me. Speaking the truth in love, grow up in all things into him who is the head, Christ. Not just speaking truth. Easy, actually, to just speak truth. Right? To speak truth in love. That's a lot harder. That's a lot harder. Let me tell you why I felt I wasn't being loved last night. Or why, let us say, love was not perhaps the driver for some of those who took a position which I understand completely on the merits. Many of you here agree with, and I respect completely. There were a few claims made that the science is clear, that ... There were also claims made that the correct spiritual perspective on this issue is clear with reference to Scripture. I am a trained scientist for what it's worth, and I'm quite interested in this issue, have been for a while. And I wanted to say, when I wasn't allowed to speak the first time, point of information, I don't think the claim that's being made for science was true. I also, though, however, and I'm as passionate about this, I can read the same Bible, and I can relate to the same God. And I was told not only if I didn't share the same position, I was unprincipled. I was told I would not be with God. I was told that we, as an organization would not be godly, would not have God on our side if we got this wrong. Now let me be absolutely clear. I am not a relativist. I believe in absolute truth. But when, as we heard from Ephesians and Corinthians, we're told to talk truth in love, I think what a lot of that is about is because we are not God. There may be truth, and we may be closer to it than others in some areas. But we need to be humble. And I want to make the distinction between truth, metaphysics on the one hand, and epistemology on the other. How we know what we know, and how we treat others based on what we believe about what we know and can know. I was told I was unprincipled. I was told I was not understanding of liberty. I was told I was practicing hypocritical politics. I wrote these down as they were being said, by the way. And as I said before, I was without God. Now let me tell you what I happen to believe about human life vis-a-vis the abortion issue. And I know many of you will disagree with what I'm about to say, and that's completely fine. I don't know that I've got the answer, and that's my point. I do know, and anybody can find this out if they pick up a science book, that 75% of all fertilized embryos are ejected from the woman's body before the 4th week. And in most cases, the woman doesn't know. Now, let me say something else too. Because I am in a room of godly people, of people who have spiritual lives. I was going to separate these two things out, the science and the religion, but why? I also know that my Bible says life begins with the blood. I also know that the liturgy says he will come to judge the quick and the dead. Not the conceived and the dead, the quick and the dead. Now, quick has always meant, before that liturgy was written, the baby quickens at the time when the mother feels the baby in the womb. Now, I know there are other verses in the Bible that can be read differently, and I know there's I think a weaker case myself that can be made biblically for the idea that life begins at conception. For me, the science and the spirituality together, they give me this. My God is not so ugly that he creates all of these souls and sends 3 out of 4, the ones that are naturally aborted. I'm going to use the word naturally aborted, and I know technically you can object to that use. And sends them straight to limbo or heaven. Or my God is his nature is much more beautiful than that. I am completely confident. I am completely confident with a clear conscience that an abortion before 4 weeks, this is my opinion, is not aborting. What I will call is not murder, because I don't believe we're dealing with a human life and a soul. I'm clear about that, and I'm completely fine if you're not. But here's the thing. We were told that I wasn't principled. We were told that that position is not one that can be consistent with principles at all or with liberty. Excuse me, but I'm here. As you said, excuse me, but I'm here. If you are going to be principled, if you are going to say to me that your position is the position of principle, and when I say me, please imagine that you're talking to anybody who might read my articles on the Huffington Post. The majority voter here in Washington State, in Seattle, King County, because what I believe, frankly, is not important. Let me get my thread, excuse me. If you're going to say, that you're principled and that person who disagrees with you on this particular issue is not, then be principled. Put the mother who has the abortion after 2 weeks, put her in prison for murder, and put yourself forward to parent a child if she has one already. Put your money where your mouth is. That's fine. That's principled. But if you're not going to say that that woman is a murderer and follow it right through on principle, and I can respect it if you do, please don't say to us who also are dealing with these issues in love, that we are not principled. Now you can. I'm not saying your position isn't principled, although I would say that if you're not going to put her in prison for murder, it isn't. I would say it's a comfort and not a principle. That would be what I would say. I would also say, if you are in a burning, this is a thought experiment, but Einstein changed the world with thought experiments, so bear with me. If you're in a laboratory on fire, and by one exit over there, there is a crying baby, one crying baby, and in that exit over there in a test tube, there are 10 embryos 1 day old. If you tell me you're pro-life and you're principled and I'm not, you better go to that exit and pick up the test tube with the 10 one-day-old embryos in it and leave that baby to die there. I believe that most pro-lifers would go for that exit and take that crying baby on the way out and leave the 10 embryos in the test tube. That's what I believe, and I believe the fact that they would do that, I think that comes from a true place. I think that comes from a moral instinct. And it would certainly make me not put the woman that did that, or the woman that had an abortion after 2 weeks because she felt, as I obviously am telling you I feel, I would not be able to look her in the eye and say, I am so right about this liberty thing that I get to take away your life because I'm going to lock you up for murder. And by the way, whatever implications that has on your kid, that's right. I don't know if I'm right or wrong. I don't know. But we're taking away lives too when we follow our principles through. This is a very difficult issue. And if you want to handle it this way, if you want to say to people, because you disagree with me on this specific, I question your intent, I question your principles, and I get to tell you that you are not for liberty and therefore we cannot work together. Well, actually, here's the thing. I think I actually agreed with those on the side of this who said, sometimes you do what's right because it's right. You stand up on principle and sometimes you damn the consequences. Actually, that is what I believe you do for principles that matter. And I believe that politics is a place for principles. And that sometimes even if you know you're going to shoot yourself in your foot, you do it because it's right. I actually believe that. So please, again, don't tell me that because I disagree on a definition of the word human, which is actually what this is. I disagree on a definition of a word human. That I am not of you. If you question my intent in that, at that point you don't love me. You are not coming from love, because if you think that I am an other thing than you, if you think that I am morally less because I disagree about a specific, you're not, where do we go? Where do we go from there? Love is accepting. Love is kind. Love doesn't have to agree with what is wrong. As I say, I'm not talking about truth. I'm talking about what do you do in the humility that you must have. Because all of us here are, as we heard today from Matt, we've fallen a long way. We've fallen a long way. I've given as much of my life for liberty, and the saving of human life. I mean, I'm sure that many of us here have argued against the drones and have, I go around the world trying to make a difference my small little way. And yeah, I want to be able to speak up for those who don't have a voice, right? There are others who don't have a voice. I just happen not to believe. I'm sorry. It's just a fact. I don't believe that a 2-week-old embryo is the same thing as the voiceless millions of fully fledged human beings who at that point in their lives are in their relationship with God, are doing what they incarnated here to do, walking their path. I can defend them too. So again, please, don't put me down. Now, when it comes to the expediency bit, I don't want to, as I said, I think the argument needs to be made from principle. But the expediency argument obviously also is important. Because if we fail, and again, I agree with so many things that were said yesterday on both sides, if we fail, this is probably the last chance. And I come from the rest of the world. Right? I came to America to do this. I should be honest, especially if I'm on film. When I came to America, I didn't know I was coming to do this. But now I know this is what I came to do. And I couldn't do this in my country. If you say monopoly of force in England, they're not sure what board game you're talking about. And England, by the way, is the best place in Europe, where they are raising tyranny faster than anywhere on this planet. Right? I go to Poland. I've been in the last few years, I've been in Poland and Kyrgyzstan and Slovakia, spreading a message of liberty and I hope a message of love. America still is the shining city on the hill. You know, it still matters what you have stood for. You know, it still matters. We've got a chance to revitalize that here because of this beautiful constitution that we heard about this morning. A constitution that not only is so beautiful in its content, but it's so perfect in the way it was expressed. So perfect that if we walk out of these doors and talk to people who never even heard of the RLC and can't spell libertarian and can't even spell liberty, because they're American, some of what we know is already in their blood. It's in the fabric here, right? It's in the fabric here. If you let people like me come and work with you, you know what? I'll even stand by while you roll that abortion law back to 4 weeks. I'll help you with that, okay? And then I'll get upset if you go back before 4 weeks. But you can have me on your side, and all those blue Republicans, all those former Democrats, all those people I can reach on the Huffington Post, right? I'll do all that because we've got a bigger thing we're fighting for, okay? And all you have to do is tell me that we can do this together in love. And you know what? I know that either I will be wrong about the specifics, or you will be, or you will be, or you will be. But I guarantee you throughout the whole fight, a bunch of us are going to be wrong about a lot of things. And those who want to take their Bible and throw that at me, or whatever it is, read the rest of it. There's a lot of messages in there about humility, you know. The article that Sandy mentioned that she read of mine, I actually wrote quite recently. And I called it Orthodoxy, the other enemy of liberty. The one that most people think is the main enemy or opposite of liberty, of course, is tyranny. Orthodoxy, as I want to define it, is tyranny in the mind. Orthodoxy is where you end up, like we saw last night, when you know that you know. And what's worse, you assume that because you're right and you're principled, that those who disagree with you must therefore believe the opposite of what you believe in the areas that bring you to your position on the issue. Right? I don't disagree with some of the speakers last night on the pro-life issue because I have an opposite belief about the importance of human life and the need to protect those with no voice, or the nature of liberty and the fact that we should fight for liberty for those who cannot fight for themselves. I agree on all those things. I happen to know something about biological anthropology and the physiology of pregnancy, and I happen to have read bits of my Bible and weighed that up differently. I could be wrong. But I'm the same thing. All politics are the politics of identity, really, right? You don't argue people round to your position through logical argument. That's a very quaint idea that libertarians especially like, because they tend to be rationalist computer programmers. It's well, until recently it's been both, actually. It's big L and small L. In 2004, a guy called Weston did an experiment with 30 men. 15 of them self-confessed strong Democrats, 15 of them self-confessed strong Republicans. He put everyone in an MRI scanner and played to them John Kerry saying something that contradicted itself. and George Bush playing something that contradicted itself, and scanned the brains as they listened to these logical inconsistencies, right? In each case, the Democrats explained away Kerry's, and the Republicans explained away Bush's. But what was most interesting was what the MRI scan said was going on in their brain. The bits that were active were the bits responsible for judgments on moral accountability, conflict resolution, as in cognitive dissonance. The bit that showed no activity whatsoever was the prefrontal cortex, which handles logical reasoning. There's a lesson there. And it is the most important lesson that we have to learn. And if you come at any issue, however right you are, out of self-righteousness, which is what I heard last night, you cannot at the same time come at the issue with love. And because of the way we're wired, you can argue me as logically as you like. I will just tell you we're not made that way. We're not made that way. What you're doing is telling me your orthodoxy. Might make you feel better. You might even be right. But we will continue down this road to tyranny. And we will be killing people. And I don't care what age they are. And I don't care where you say it starts. Orthodoxy, tyranny of the mind. Now, please don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying there is not a truth. I'm not saying there is not a truth that we must work very hard to find and to live by and to share and to proselytize. Of course. But you are an imperfect vessel for it, finder of it, and so am I. Argue it out in your imperfection, as will I. But don't say, please, that the people you are yet to persuade, because you know that you're being principled, are not. Because you feel that you're being consistent, are not. Because you feel driven by a passion for liberty, that we are not. And it is okay for some of us to be wrong. And maybe later, if we get where we want to get, as we were saying yesterday, we'll work together right up with this abortion law thing, if that even is the same issue by the time we've turned this country around, I don't know. And then we'll sit down and have a civil difference agreement about the physiology that is implied by this 4-week mark, as I see it. But we'd be in a much better place, wouldn't we? Because we all want to be aborting fewer fetuses or embryos or babies. And whatever language I use doesn't make me any different from you. Right? We all want to be doing that, and we all have the same bigger goal. Truth spoken without love, you're like a clanging cymbal. And nobody likes clanging cymbals. I mentioned expediency, then I touched on it, but not explicitly. It's all about common ground. We have disagreements of principle and of fact, and we have agreements of principle and agreements of fact with anybody, with everybody. You get to choose which ones you want to emphasize. It's a choice. Right? But you've got to start with the end in mind. If you're doing politics and the stakes are so high, you're not actually doing politics at all. You're doing psychology. You're doing sales. We're salesmen and marketers. Right? You can't sell anyone that knows you don't love them, that knows you don't respect them, that just feels you want to put them down. You've got to find, when you make a sale, and by the way, I should say, my first extended experience of the United States was coming to sell books door to door in my early 20s in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I didn't even know where Harrisburg was until they put me on the bus and sent me there. Right? I studied physics and philosophy, and now I go around talking about politics and economics. So you might say I'm a fraud, but it happens that I realized that the reason I was doing all of that, selling books to help kids out with their homework for 3 months many years ago, is that that's what's equipped me to be able to write an article that brought people around from the left for liberty. It's just sales and marketing. Our ideas, just because they're ideas, and just because they're deeply true, doesn't mean we don't have to sell them. Like any salesman has to sell books when he knocks, door to door. It's the same thing. Salesmen have to respect their customers. They have to shut up for long enough for the customer to tell them how you're going to sell them. Right? Your customer tells you how to sell them. There was a little trick that I was told when I was being trained to sell books door to door. They told me, always meet the objection up front. And it worked like a magic trick. Right? If you know someone has a reason to not buy what you're selling, all you got to do is get to it before they do. Say it first. Say it first, right? When I wrote my Blue Republican article, If You Love Peace, Become a Blue Republican Just for a Year, which I wrote to bring Obama voters who voted for, they thought, civil rights, peace, and against crony corporatism. I made a point of putting a paragraph in there saying, now I know what your objection is. I know what your problem is. Your problem is that you need this big state to make sure that the poorest and weakest among us will not be left to fend for themselves and left, in pain. All these good reasons why the left supports the welfare state, good intentions. So I got there first, and I said, okay, are you so sure that our current delivery of that system, our current federalized statist, big government delivery of that system, is so effective that you want to keep it so much that you want to continue this crony corporatism, you want to continue killing innocent civilians, and you want to continue the takedown of the Bill of Rights? I got there, you get there first. Look, it worked. I guess it worked. But before that, of course, I'm respecting their motivation. I'm affirming the reasons they voted as they did. I'm affirming their compassion. I'm affirming the love that they come at their fellow Americans with. We all need to do that. And some of us will, out of love, do things that actually, because we are somewhat blind, because we are imperfect, aren't really that loving, don't get us to where we need to go. My God, the progressive agenda has been that writ large since the 40s or 50s, right? But remember, in the 40s, 50s, 60s, you have this big government, you have this thing called law. It's common sense. If you want to do good, you legislate your good. That's not an unreasonable position. That's not unreasonable. It's actually a priori extremely reasonable. Now we have data. Now we've seen differently. What have we seen, actually? We have seen that it is not the good intentions that determine where you end up. We have seen it is the way in which you apply. It's your method. It's the way you apply those intentions, the way you seek those intentions. It's your method that determines where you end up. And if your method is one of reduced liberty, well, we know where we get. We've got a welfare state, interestingly, that has stabilized a system in which we now 40%, the poorest 40% of Americans own 0.03% of the assets. And the richest 1% own more than 100 times more than that. Okay? That welfare state has stabilized a system where we have decapitalized the poorest among us, taken away all of their opportunity, dehumanized them. Right? All in the name of doing the very opposite, of providing economic opportunity. Now those data are in. And if you allow that the person who supported that system did so for the right reason, didn't see the data, and he might be every bit as good as you, and every bit as principled as you, you'll be able to change his mind. Because you won't be telling him why he's wrong, which a salesman never does if he wants to make a sale. You're helping him clarify what he already believes. You're doing him or her a service. That's something, that word goes with love too. Right? We're all on a journey together. And when you go on a journey together, you have to start from where you begin. You have to start from where they are, not where you want to be, or just close to the end because it's closer to the end.
So right. So right.
So I will end by saying this. We fight for liberty because we know that we've seen how the road to hell is paved with good intentions. We have seen that it's the method that our Constitution was written to protect, the method of liberty, right? We have seen how important that is, and now we're fighting for our lives to get it, perhaps in some cases with our lives to get it back. If that's true in politics, why would it not be true? Why would it not be true in an evening in a political meeting like last night that the way in which you approach people and talk to people and understand people and accept people, why would it not also be the method that would determine if you get to where we need to get? It is the same thing. Because these are the eternal truths that apply across the board, that we all share. And as you kindly quoted from my article, Sandy, if you're here for liberty, if you sincerely believe that, and I don't think anybody really doubted that last night. I think if those people who said the things that they said looked into their hearts, they knew we were here for principle. They knew we were here for liberty. And I bet they could even, if they just agreed for 30 seconds to be open to the fact, they would even know, and it would be quite obvious, that if I personally disagreed with them on this particular issue, it's not because I don't care about the unborn, or the unvoiced, or life itself, or liberty. If they engaged me with love, they would have found that out. Because you must first seek to understand, and then, and only then, can you seek to be understood, because only then will you be understood. Thanks very much.